we're going to be focusing on one topic today because we heard from all of you and there were a lot of things that people are wanting to discuss. The thing that kind of stood out to us the most was concerning remote work. And today we have some wonderful people, some wonderful firm leaders who are assisting us in this conversation. We have Jeff Hausman, Detroit Office Director at Smith Group. We have Gina Van Tyne from Inform Studio, Chuck Lewis, a president at Integrated Design Solutions. And the way this will work is we are going to pose a question to each of these folks, and we are kind of counting on everybody to be respectful of the unique situation of having multiple microphones, multiple participants. So what we'll do is we'll ask the question to one of our firm leaders and kind of get the conversation going. If you would like to participate or have something to add, we ask that you put your question in the chat and leave your name, and we will unmute you and kind of get things going. And yeah, so we are going to get started and kind of jump right in to the first section. So the biggest question we have to kind of kick things off is, are you implementing remote work? And I would like to hand this one off to Jeff. So I'm going to unmute you, and if you could unmute yourself, and we will get this going.
Okay, so
hey Jeff.
This is Jeff Hausman. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Good. So yes, Smith Group implemented our remote work policy effective Tuesday. So we're into day 3, and it's working pretty well. Lots of challenges, and things change constantly. And that's probably the most important thing that we've asked our staff to be understanding, that we make a decision and then we'll change that decision based on further input and more information. And that seems to be the situation as we are going forward. We are we have team sites, Microsoft Teams, and we're using WebEx as our communication tools, along with Jabber, and are the main communication tools that we are using to communicate with everybody and have teams communicate with each other.
Awesome. I would also like to add that these questions are supposed to be open, and we want to avoid judgment or criticism. We are simply putting these questions out there for other people to answer and kind of talk about how they are adjusting to this situation. So I guess a follow-up question is, there's lots of talk about flattening the curve. A lot of these questions that we'll be asking are based on your questions, the participants, and what you guys wrote into us for this talk. So a follow-up question to that is, how can we, how are firms helping to flatten the curve? And how can we interact with clients who are also doing the same? And I'm going to take a look here. So please feel free, anybody, to weigh in. Please just add your name to the chat and we'll hand it over to you. We're not sure if this is something that's happening across the board and most people are implementing. If not, we can also move on to kind of question 2. Okay, Anne. Awesome. Let's find Anne right now.
Patricia, this is Chuck Lewis. Can I jump in?
Absolutely, please.
So similar to what Jeff was just saying, we're in day 3 as well. Ironically, we closed our office down Tuesday afternoon. We're doing similar type things and everybody's jumping into Teams. We were trying to implement Teams actually this quarter, and now we're just jumping in. And it seems to be, even this morning, the chat piece seems to be the best way to communicate, and everyone's communicating together because it's like instant messaging and more instantaneous discussion. One of our biggest challenges was how to use Revit and the bandwidth related to our system and our network. And what we ended up doing was everyone came in a series of schedules and took their computers home with them. And we moved all of our Revit models onto BIM 360 so that we could access them without concerns. And we only had a few people that have issues with internet. And as much as Jeff said, we're also day to day trying to figure out what's the next new thing we need to solve.
Awesome. Anne, I know, had added some great insight in the chat. Anne, if you want to kind of speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, this is Ann Dolcher. I was going to say we had a test for our big team on Thursday last week, and then Monday was our test for everyone to work from home, which then we obviously just extended. So we've been doing it for a while. Some little things that have been important, people have asked and made a difference, is taking your chair home for helping your setup at home. We have had people who've taken their desktops home and ordering longer Ethernet cables for those people so they can directly hook their desktops into their router at home to have better connectivity. We have something called Panzura. I'm not the IT person, and so it's really, City of Detroit seems like those people who live in the city have the worst, internet connectivity issues. So that's sort of the localized issue. And then we moved to Slack probably about 3 months ago, and so that's been important in keeping up the social channels on that, firm-wide photo contest and Quinn Evans' parents channel for people to, talk on those issues or concerns has been really great on that. And then also on my end in setting up sort of not a phone tree, but thinking of from me to 5 or 6 people who sit in different locations in the office so that I can connect through to those, and those people are connecting daily with the people who sat around them, and setting up, every couple days, just a 15-minute video chat for the people that they're not seeing anymore, and especially for the people who are home and live alone, to have that social chat of work for the social piece of it rather than just the physical getting the work done.
Right.
Thank you, Anne. Now, there's a lot of people in the chat that are asking about whether or not the entire offices are working remotely now. And so I would encourage the people who have large amounts of employees that are working from home to chime in and talk about some of the challenges that you guys have faced, or some of the tactics that you guys are using to implement remote work between such a large group of people, either across the country or even just within your own firm here in Metro Detroit. Jeff, Nahaya, Chuck, I'm looking at you guys.
Yeah, this is Jeff Hausman again. So yeah, all 1,300 employees of Smith Group are asked to work remotely if possible. The good news that we had is we've had a number of remote employees for a while, and so we've been able to use their experience as ways to do that. The different offices have been doing all hands chats, and actually renamed it to wash all your hands chats, as opposed to just all hands. So as a reminder to wash your hands frequently. And the other thing that, and I think, can't remember her name, from Quinn Evans was saying, our term for making sure you're doing the the social side is coffee chats. So we encourage people to have coffee chats on a regular basis to stay in contact with each other, to keep the social aspects going up, and to schedule those and actually make sure that you're talking about things that are not just work related all the time, to employ the process of work and the social aspects of work as part of that.
Can you elaborate, Jeff, what you mean by coffee chats?
Exactly that, is you take your favorite drink and have a chat with one or more people that you would normally do as you were walking around the office, or sitting at a place in the office to have a chat that's not necessarily work related. It's it's about your family, your day, your plans, those kind of things. How you're coping with something. So just the coffee chat is the term that we came up with to do that. We have a lot of coffee drinkers. So
Lauren, this is Chuck Lewis. I would add, I'm going to steal that, by the way, Jeff. I like that name. We've kind of had our teams meeting every morning to just touch base, like in a small huddle via Teams. To keep, and we're only in a few days here. For us, it was the cultural shift of going home and working from home was very difficult at first, and trying people to understand why we were doing it, and for their safety and to help reduce the curve as it's being talked about. We felt it was really, really important to pull the plug and do it this week. So we're using Teams and video chatting, and people are sending pictures of their workstations as they get set up and things like that. That's kind of how we've started to be a little bit more social, even in these first few days.
Gensler is very similar. We have some already scheduled standing meetings, so we just converted them to be remote meetings and have our regular studio meeting. Our teams meet on a regular basis, so we kept all of those touch points. And then in addition to that, making sure that we connected our leadership and managers to one-on-one times with their team members too. Just to make sure that everybody is staffed, that they're connected, that they have the information that they need. Communication is a big part of our process, so we're just amping it up and doing it in different ways than we would normally.
I would add too that we coined a term here of hyper communication, and in these times. So I've been following all of the chat, all the different team sites, and reaching out to them every morning to see what help they need. And that seems to help as well, so that they know there's support if they need it.
Chuck, this is Kim Montague. We're doing something similar. We have a Monday, Wednesday, Friday virtual huddle that we've been doing just for 30 minutes to check in with everyone, to see if they have, how are they doing with their workstation? Do they need something else? How are they doing emotionally? We've also done some of the similar things, sharing pictures of our home office work environments and how some people are trying to make do with less than ideal home office environments in terms of sit to stand desks and what have you. We've also had a lot of discussion just from a social standpoint about virtual happy hours. Our Chicago office had one yesterday and invited all of the Detroit office to join them. So there's some funny pictures back and forth from the virtual happy hours too, which has been, kind of, laughter can be a good stress reliever too, knowing full well that a lot of our folks in our studio are under a lot of stress in terms of working from a home environment, which many of them have not done before.
We also are joined by Gina Vantine of Inform Studio. Gina, would you like to speak to this topic a little bit from the perspective of a more medium-sized firm?
Sure, Lauren. We've put in process basically a volunteer work from home. We have 2 small remote offices already, so we've been doing this for a very long time. But a couple of things that I think would be helpful for some people. I know that BIM 360 can be kind of expensive. One of the things that we have done, we put about 2 years ago or so, 2.5 years ago, when we opened our Chicago office, we put a piece of hardware in the Chicago office and a piece of hardware here, and that gives us a direct tunnel through our VPN. But it's also a booster. Excuse me. It's from a company called Riverbed, and the software inside it is called Steelhead. They also have a virtual product that they use, which they gave us a great deal on for our people. It's $25 per month per person. And what that does is it's really designed and engineered for Revit. So what happens is it knows, it's smart technology, right? So it knows when somebody opens a file and it works on something and maybe they close it down. It was just something really quick that they had to do. They sync the model. They don't have to sync the entire model. That Steelhead mobile will actually be smart enough to know that they only changed the door swing on this one room or something to that effect. So it goes very quickly. And that has really helped us a lot. But we've been using that for about 2.5 years now or so, something like that. So the culture thing is a very interesting piece of it. Oh, we're a Google company, so we use chat all the time inside the office. Don't ask me why, but even inside the offices, we use it. So people are on it constantly, and we have an informal room and an informal room. And people are constantly talking back and forth to each other on informal. But we're a lot like Chuck. We're trying to check in with everybody every day.
And Don, you had an interesting question about wondering if anybody is combining telework, split shift, and social distancing of a skeleton crew in the office. Does anybody want to speak to that?
It's not hard to be socially distant when there's only 8 of you in the office, for sure. So we're not having any problems with that. And honestly, we're potentially an anomaly, right? We have a very young office generally. We only have one gentleman that is in the risk category. So, but we do have a lot of 2 career parents. So people started working from home en masse after Friday. And then on Monday, we had a few more people start working from home. But, you know, it's like, I forget who it was, somebody mentioned, you know, people aren't used to that. They're not used to sitting all day at home. So we've been trying to talk to people about what's helpful, how to be a little bit more structured so that, you know, you have a work time and an off time. We want people to check in when they start and when they leave, so we don't bother them when they're not working, you know, that kind of thing, trying to keep things normalized.
So can you, Gina or Jeff or Chuck, do you guys want to talk a little bit about how you manage the oversight of remote working staff and check up on assignments and maintain a certain level of productivity in what might be a completely new environment for people to actually produce work in?
This is Chuck. I'll chat a little bit about that. Similar to what Nahaya was saying, I think it has to be, you have to hyper communicate with your team all the time. And I think what we've done is set our project managers up on our larger projects and said, here's what we need you to do to manage the team differently. Setting up the huddles in the morning and making sure that they contact us with things that are problems. The team chat has been viral for us. Like I said, we were going to use Teams and we're trying to implement that this month, but now we were just thrown into it like we normally do, right? No training. And that's been a really good way to know what people are talking about quickly and without having to filter through 40 emails or hundreds of emails.
Yeah, this is Jeff Hausman again. We've got our project managers all going through new work plans with the teams to go through what they need to do to accomplish the work that they need to get accomplished. So it's a remote work plan that includes check-ins on a not a regular basis, not necessarily every day, because depending on the team's it's not always like that. But then a whole host of checklists to go through to just make sure everybody is communicating and everybody is addressing the issues that they're having in terms of delivering the work in a timely manner. And are there any issues from a technology standpoint that are not working? So we're using the project managers to collect that to get back to our IT staff to be able to make sure we're addressing all those kind of items.
Chuck, you mentioned the constant communications. Are there any special platforms, tips, tricks, project tracking software that you guys use to help with those communications?
Yeah, we've been
Ann
working
mentioned Slack earlier.
Yeah, we've been working with Monday.com for a long time to tracking tasks with our teams, especially on large projects. But right now we're switching over to Teams with this. It's just a better way to communicate, and it ties into our Microsoft platform for Office. And
we're using, sorry, Chuck, we're using Trello for that type of thing. We've been using that for a while as well.
Trello's a good one, and it's very similar to Monday.com and very intuitive. It's almost like rows of stickers, sticky notes of tasks that you can manage. Really good program. I have a question to pose out there. Maybe Jeff, what have you seen related to construction site visits? I know in other parts of the country, construction's been shut down, like in Boston, I think I heard, and other areas. We continue to send our people to the construction sites on a weekly basis. It concerns me a lot because we're trying to not do that and isolate everyone, but the construction we see is continuing.
Right.
This is the.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
So we just issued a directive this morning because the construction sites are still trying to stay active, and HEC has come out with a thing from the president saying, hey, this is a way to keep the economy going. We should do this. We can do it safely. And so that's part of the process. But our process is, first, if a staff member does not feel comfortable going to a site, we're not going to do that, make them do that. So that's the most important thing. Their safety and their understanding is most important. But then following all the procedures that the contractors have set up, the one thing that we've truly implemented is you have to have your own PPE. You cannot share, you cannot use what's been on site anymore. You bring your own hard hat, safety vest, safety goggles, your shoes, your closed-toe shoes or boots, and also bring hand sanitizer. And then, but that's if you have to go. But the first process would be check with your project manager, studio leader, and principal in charge to see if things can be done virtually. So we've had FaceTime meetings now. We've had other things to have the contractor show us issues and be able to respond immediately. So that's how we're addressing it. But definitely seeing that construction is still going on, and we're trying to support our clients and our contractors with the way we can do that most effectively.
I would chime in. This is Ann Dolcher. We have taken our personnel who are on-site trailers, in the on-site trailers, they're now working from home and going to the site, more on an as-needed basis. And second, the thought, everyone has their own protection equipment on that. We were surprised. We offered to do a walkthrough for a project we're bidding. We offered to do that remotely and then let the contractors go out, individually to see the sites. The state DNR wanted to go ahead and hold that and just have everyone outside and standing at a distance and not do that as a virtual meeting. And so we were, sending someone who is comfortable with that and following the lead of the client in that case.
Also, certain field visits, especially some of our healthcare clients, are starting to require that a temperature check. If you're going to go there for a field verification or for some task, they check your temperature before you can enter. Has anyone else heard of that?
We haven't had that happen yet, but we did do our first virtual 50% walkthrough yesterday.
Cool.
So that actually went fairly well for a project out east somewhere. I forget where exactly.
Okay.
And what did you use for that virtual walkthrough?
I'm not really sure. I think the contractor had an iPad and they used FaceTime.
Very nice. Yeah.
So our Shanghai office, the folks were out for several weeks, but every time you walk in the office into the building, your temperature is scanned as you walk in the building. So that's probably something that's coming our way.
Yeah.
And the other thing is General Motors is, when we have to go out to the General Motors site, they have a whole list of requirements, and you can't even respond by saying I have coughed in the last 2 weeks, or you're turned away.
Mm-hmm.
So.
How have your clients reacted to this shift? Do you find them to be flexible with all of the new restrictions on social distancing and everything? Or are some clients more challenging to work with than others when it comes to the projects that you're working on? And if so, can you explain why that is?
I've only experienced flexible clients, since this pandemic, which is very nice. It's reassuring. When it comes to deadlines and things like that.
Lauren, this is Kim Montague again. Because most of our work is in healthcare, and we could have a whole other hour-long discussion about healthcare clients and the challenges that they face right now. I would say that we have been the ones that have had to adapt to them, not necessarily the other way around. So many of them have asked us not to come onto their campuses because they are so inundated with people, either treating people or screening people or testing. And a lot of the folks that we had worked with in the past are now have another job. So some of our projects, I won't say that they're slowing down, but our response time from them has definitely lengthened, where we might need answers on a specific part of the project. We might not get it for, a few extra days because they're so inundated with requirements at their facilities. And I'm sure others on the call that have healthcare clients, they've probably experienced the same things.
This is Chuck Lewis. I would add too that I think a lot of our clients went virtual and talked to us about that about a week or so before we closed their office. I mean, Michigan, for example, eliminated out-of-town visits than it was even if you're in town. A lot of the universities were dealing with shutting down and sending students home, so there was a little bit of a delay there, but that seems to be picking up. I have seen some projects be pushed off a little bit for a couple of weeks, especially if we were just getting started and kicking them off. But overall, I think I agree with Kim. The clients are pushing us to work with them, and they're all been very, very supportive. Everyone understands that this is not normal times.
So speaking of school closings and just being more accommodating, are any firms contemplating accommodations for working parent households that have young children at home?
What kind of preparations are you thinking, Lauren? So it's
Well, Megan was the one who brought up the question. I know she's got 2 young boys at home. Megan, would you like to expand upon that?
Sure, this is Megan speaking. I'm this person. I am trying to work full time, and my husband also works full time. We are both at home, and he works for GM, and he was sent home on Monday. And we have 2 children that are under 2.5, and their daycare is closed. So I'm just wondering what other firms are thinking about their 2-parent households that are like what do they see the coming weeks be like? Because I from personal experience, I'm working a really long day and it's not sustainable.
Yeah, this is Nahaya from Gensler, and we've been seeing that also in our Asia offices and trying to learn some lessons from them. And we don't have one definitive solution, but we have seen that fatigue is an ongoing issue with people working from home, and that also what is the working day is stretching. So as people are managing and balancing other aspects of their life, they might be working earlier or later and making sure that the teams have flexibility to do so. But it goes back to the communication and communicating very realistically what your new limitations are with the situation that you're in, and going to what Chuck was saying with the hyper sharing. Sometimes it might be more than you would normally share with an employer, but it's helpful for the people on our teams just to be really honest with us so we know what's going on, and we make adjustments as we see fit on an individual basis.
I would say that it is this is Anne at Quinn Evans, it's our families that I gotten the request of people, can they spend a day or half a day in the office, is mostly our parents with 2 small kids who need half a day or a day of that mental time you can concentrate. Having 4 kids myself, I understand what that takes into account. People are looking at shift work for trading off with their spouse, and then a lot of that has been clear communication of them working to try and set up schedules within their household and sharing those with me or with their project teams for an understanding of which days or which hours they're most available.
This is Chuck. I would add too that we're just trying to figure that out, and I think what I've told our people is just be as efficient as you can and work when you can and try to take care of the clients, but first and foremost take care of your family. And my biggest concern is we have about 140 people, and if we close down the office for everyone's safety and then we have half of them coming back in, what have we really accomplished? So we're trying to mitigate that and be careful with how many people do actually come in. And we've asked them to only come in when they need to do something like an interior samples. You have to get materials, or you have to pick up shop drawings or plots and things like that. But we're just giving them full range flexibility to work in the best way they can and try to support them.
To second that, I would say we are, on the leadership side, we are just making an assumption that people are not as productive on the leadership, the project, the
100%
profitability.
Is anyone concerned about the decrease in efficiency and contractual obligations?
Only between midnight and 6 in the morning, all night long. Yeah, that's a very big concern, I think, for all of us, is how do we get through it? How do we maintain paying payroll and having cash flow and making people like that hit our deadlines. But our clients are also a little bit understanding about the deadlines as well. And I don't mean to make light of it, but it's really a big concern for everyone that's in leadership, I'm sure.
Yeah, the world has changed so quickly in the last week and a half, you know, fortunately, only a couple of our clients have said they're going to stop projects at this point. But we're doing a lot of work for General Motors, and they just said they're going to close down their plants. They're not going to have cash. They're not going to have cash. So it's going to be a question of when does that work stop, and then what do we do? So yeah, that's definitely a concern. So.
I think
Aiken,
in
would you like
response to
to
the
ask
time
your,
frame, sorry,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
that's okay. I think in response to the time frame, we're trying to follow the state's lead at this point. You know, it really puts a real, you know, hurdle in everybody's way with the schools being closed, although it seems to be something that, you know, it seemed inevitable. But with 2 career families and the schools and daycares being closed, it's a really hard thing to try to navigate. And a lot of our nurses and doctors and PAs and med techs and everybody else are in that boat. So what are we going to do about that long term? But I think at this point, we're just trying to follow the state's lead. And so far right now, we're following that, you know, till the end of the month type of time frame.
And Gina, you mean related to minimizing how many people are together and that kind of thing is related to the
Yeah.
state as well? Yeah.
Yep.
So one of the things that somebody was asking about, you know, daycare and all that other things, the high schools, Birmingham Groves and Seaholm in Birmingham, the students, the National Honor Society was looking at that and saying, is there a way that as students, could we be helping, you know, parents out? I haven't heard that that's actually got in place, but they at least were thinking about possibility of that. Obviously, that puts pressure on other people, and you're bringing possibly somebody different into your household. But that was one of the things that the National Honor Society was trying to look at as ways to help parents that are trying to still work but don't have their normal daycare kind of situation.
Thank you all for your contributions to that. We have a question from Aiken of Harley Ellis asking how firms are dealing with the physical product submittals during the construction administration. We are now talking to our contractors about possibly sending samples to people.
So I was in a meeting right before this call about that very subject. What we're trying to do is ask contractors to maybe deliver them to our office on maybe Tuesdays and Thursdays so that we can have someone pick them up and distribute them as needed. When our initial thought is that if it's a sample, for example, it's a piece of brick that they have to approve or something, where instead of shipping the sample to their home, to the person's home who has to review it, we're going to take photographs and work that way and try to send things digitally as they come through. We're also going to try to see if the contractors will do that before they even send them to our office, just to keep construction moving.
Okay, thanks, Chuck. What about administrative staff? Thoughts or concerns on the processing of payment invoices, paychecks if you have to send your accounting department home? No worries, Dave.
This is Chuck. I'll jump in. Our administrative staff are here today. Tomorrow, we're all kind of not going to be here anymore. They will come in and we print our own checks, and payroll is done through a payroll service that delivers them to us. And most people have direct deposits, so we're not handing out physical paper checks anymore. So it isn't that big of a concern for us.
It was a chance for us to make the 2 or 3 people who did not get expense checks or their paycheck on direct deposit to say that they had to switch to that. And then we do sort of once a week to print checks, have 1 or 2 of the accounting staff coming in right now.
I feel your pain on that, Ann, and that's a great idea. No longer get a printed check.
Yeah, we've moved almost every one of our clients to, or not clients, vendors to ACH. Is that right? So you have to be electronic. So we write very few checks to most people. So there's still a number, but it's mostly electronic.
Yeah, pretty much our whole staff is virtual if they need to be. So our accounting and our administrative can all happen virtually because we work. Everything is housed here in Northville for back office. So we've been doing that for a long time. It's just kind of the way we do business.
So at this point, I would ask if there are any other burning questions regarding remote work, if you could enter them into the chat box, and I'll give you a couple of minutes to do that. Otherwise, we will be wrapping up this webinar shortly. If anybody has anything that they want to just chime in, we of course welcome you to unmute yourself and talk. This is a virtual roundtable after all.
Hey Lauren, this is Sam Michelle. I'm just wondering if there's any additional sort of big topics that's come out of this that people are looking for us to talk about more at another time.
Yeah, so we are certainly not done with these virtual roundtables. We know that we have to address technology very specifically, what folks are using and what resources are out there, the industry network and how we interface with our product reps and other industry professionals, as well as ultimately the big question of how this is going to impact our clients and our projects, which is information that we don't have now, but we will probably see more of in the upcoming future. So we can't address all of these in 1 hour, unfortunately, which is why we just started with talking about remote work, but we will be hosting another one of these very soon. And so we ask you all to look out and stay stay attuned to what we may be doing. All right. So I want to just briefly before I close, I want to ask the question, what AIA Detroit can do for you guys. And right now on our website, we currently have a page that is dedicated to resources that has been compiled by AIA National and some from AIA Chicago. We're constantly looking for resources to add to that page. So if there are links that you would like to send us that you think would be a helpful part of that collective, we would be more than happy to post that to our website. But in the meantime, besides a digital archive of things that you might be able to access, what else could AIA Detroit as an organization be doing for you in your practice?
Hey, Lauren, I was on a Boston Society of Architects webinar just yesterday, I think. And a couple of things that they brought up, which I thought was really interesting, and the list of questions, there were two things. I want to address your question, but it prompted it from some of the things that they had said. One of the questions that you sent out earlier was somebody wanted to know how can we verify staff members are putting in the hours recorded, working efficiently with limited interruptions. So, we can't be there, right? So one of the things that this lady brought up, and I can't recall her name at this point, but she said that it sounded like she actually started her company almost virtually, like everybody would work from home, and they've continued to do work like that. It's very flexible, all that kind of thing.
You're talking about the lady from SOM, the SOM Architects? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And it sounded like her firm wasn't very large, but one of the things she said, which I think is something we live by here, is that, we're a delivery-based business. So we got to remember that. And if you know, things aren't getting done, you're going to know. Your project leaders will know, your project managers will know. It will become apparent pretty quickly. But being remote now, people need to check in, like physically make an effort to check in with everybody way more often. You have people that are still kind of entry-level people working from home now. Nobody happens to walk by their desk anymore and sees that they're having a problem or something like that, or they haven't said anything, but you have to be more proactive now. So that's one of the things that we're preaching to our people now. You have to check in with your team much more often than you normally would necessarily. The other thing that I was thinking because of that is in reference to your question directly, I would love it if you guys could reach out to your counterparts all over the country and you know, just get some ideas like some of the things we've talked about today, and just tell us what they're seeing. One of the things that we talked about was reaching out to some of our colleagues and seeing, you know, it's like, I think it was Jeff that said, you know, GM is shutting down. We've had one client that was forced to shut down because they are a fitness group, so nobody's going in anymore. They're not having any revenue. But other than that, everybody else seems to be still going forward, still looking at new deals, still in the process of you know, business as usual as much as possible. So that kind of thing, I think, would be really helpful to know from across the country, since we don't necessarily have that, you know, sphere of influence to reach out to.
Wonderful suggestion. Thank you, Gina. And I will say that the Boston Society of Architects presentation that she mentioned, we will be linking that to our website as well, because it does go a little bit further in depth about tools and other things that you can use while working remotely.
I would add that they're also doing a managing teams remotely webinar tomorrow that should be good.
Lauren, if I might add a comment from a local government perspective. This is Scott Cope with the City of Rochester Hills in Michigan. And I just want to let people know, I know I have a conference call I'm setting up for tomorrow for Southeast Michigan building officials to discuss how we're dealing with this, to try to keep construction moving forward, both in the permit issuance, plan review, and inspection process, to try to help the construction process continue moving forward as we go. And if there's any questions about that, I'm certainly more than happy to try to accommodate.
Scott, if you could send me that information, that would be fantastic.
We will definitely share that.
Okay. So this is Jeff Hausman again. People were asking, how do you check? And I think Gina was the one that said it'll be pretty obvious. Check people how work is being done, and you have to check in a lot. But I think one of the things as leaders of firms we have to do is we've got to trust that our staff is really going to be trying their best to do whatever they can do, and realize that's going to be difficult. But we have to, as leaders, have to portray and expect that they're seeing that we trust in their abilities to do this, and that they're just looking for ways to be more effective, and sort of believe that they're doing their best, and start with that, just as leaders, to portray a sense of calm and a sense of we're in this together, and we're hoping that we'll make it all work, but that you know, do your best, and we'll see how that works.
I wholeheartedly agree with you, Jeff. We know who our people are, right? We have great staff. We know how they work. We know they are trustworthy and dependable, and they're going to do their best. What we do need to make sure that they do is reach out to us if they are having issues, and we want to make sure that that is a very easy conversation to have, a very, you know, trusted conversation to have.
Well, I just want to say thank you for everybody who participated today, and I will close on a very positive comment from James Jewett. Remember, the economy was strong before this, and it will bounce back strong. This is not 2008, and let's hope that is the case. We have recorded this session and we'll be posting it on our YouTube channel. And as always, you can contact Patty and I at any point in time for questions or the direction to the resources page on our website. Thank you all so much for joining us today. And we look forward to the next roundtable that we will be sending out information for shortly.